Where are you? Where are you based?
I'm in near Kuala Lumpur in Petaling Jaya. This is like, almost bordering Kuala Lumpur. And the time now is we are 12 hours apart from New York. So we are 8 p.m. Yes, that's right. So I'm still in office. I've decided to stay back for a while and get this done from the office. And where are you, Prof? Are you all in New York?
I am currently in Ottawa, Canada.
I see. Okay, right.
In Canada, I'm Canadian, but I work in US. And
I see. What's the time? What's the time there, Prof?
Well, the time here is 8 a.m. morning.
Okay, so it's 12 hours.
Yeah. And,
Hello.
Hello. Good morning, Dr. Gunha.
Good evening. Good evening. I'm Shishir Gokhale.
Hi.
Yeah.
Shishir, how is it? I'm good.
I'm from Nepal. How do you do?
Good. We have 15 minutes, so hopefully, we get all colleagues, everybody connecting. Right. So where are you, Dr. Gupta? Where are you? Oh, Dr. Gupta.
Gokhale. Yeah, I'm working at Manipal College of Medical Sciences. It's a medical school in Nepal.
In Nepal.
It's one of the first private medical schools in Nepal. We are about 25-year-old. I'm professor and head department of microbiology, as well as director academics and vice principal for the college.
Yeah, Nepal. I had a lot of Nepalese students. I remember back in Iowa, I had students from Nepal. They're very, very bright. Actually, they've been studying masters in software development. Because, a lot of I know a lot of software developers in your country and in the region of, India and that part.
Yes.
They come to do master's degree in US, and so that easy way for US to get very smart people, in software. And of course, for young people, it's an opportunity to make a good living. But anyway, so hopefully we'll see that this COVID crisis will pass, because it's not looking very good now.
Yeah.
I'm little doubtful about it. In fact, yesterday itself we had a webinar on COVID. I was part of that on the vaccine group. There is a very high hope that vaccines will be available, but things are not as bright as they are being projected. There are lots of issues involved with the vaccines. Yes, theoretically, it's been proved that it does stimulate the immune system and leads to antibody productions. But will those antibodies protect us or not is a big question. Because right now, as we are understanding COVID more and more, we are seeing that wherever there is more vigorous immune response, there is more severity of the disease. So, and it has been seen in case of dengue virus infection also. So, jury is still out. Let's see.
Yeah, but good morning, Dr. Grewal. How are you?
Good afternoon. It's good morning there.
Good afternoon. And good afternoon, Dr. Sen. Hello.
Good afternoon, Professor Babulak. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to all others, Dr. Saurabh, Dr. Vicharan, Shishir, Brigadier Grewal, and Simardev Singh. Good afternoon to all of you.
Welcome. Yeah, we had.
How do you do?
We talked with about this virus, and I'm still puzzled. I had a Chinese professor colleague, and soon after the news came out, I asked him to do research because, you know, it's surprising that in China, in Wuhan, when everything started, they only have very, you know, compared to other places, quite small number of cases. Well, but is it possible that they have found something like, they have all these different ways of Chinese medicine, that they applied something or they used something that maybe prevents that spread or whatever?
One could,
Uh,
may I? Sorry.
one can't really. Yes, please.
No, please go on, Dr. Gokhale, please.
No, you are saying something. I didn't
No,
want to interrupt.
please carry on. Please carry on. I'm sorry I interrupted you. Please carry on.
Okay. Yeah. I will see these Chinese medicines, herbal medicines, or Ayurveda, where there are lots of claims about it, but how many of them really work? There haven't been really double-blinded scientific studies which we do for all other medicines or vaccines to prove their efficacy. So sometimes it becomes groping in the dark and trying to catch whatever the last fall you can in an attempt to maybe give yourself a psychological boost that perhaps this will work. It may work. I'm not saying it doesn't work. Sometimes it does work, but we don't have really very big proof for that. So, as you mentioned, did Chinese invent something which could protect them from spread beyond Wuhan? Well, possible. It's quite possible. But had it been so, the common sense prevails that they would have marketed it by now and made millions of dollars.
Mm. Yeah, well, it's interesting. Yeah. It's just statistics, looking at numbers. So like I can imagine everybody, same here, like US, Canada, everybody is pushing for vaccine, but I can just think of talking to colleagues, medical colleagues such as yourself. It's not a quick thing, you really have to.
It's not a magic bullet. It's not going to work like that. Uh, it will take maybe a couple of years before we really can know how beneficial the vaccines will be. And there could be inherent harms involved into that.
Mm.
Uh, like we had it with the dengue virus, we had it with certain other Ebola viruses, vaccines, that
Mm.
it didn't work the way we expected it to work.
Mm.
And in fact, there is a very interesting story about, or interesting fact about dengue virus infection, that in all other diseases, we give vaccine to the person who has never been exposed to the disease.
Mm.
You don't have to give vaccine to a person who already had a smallpox or a measles or a mumps. He doesn't require a vaccine because natural immunity has occurred. In case of dengue, it's the other way around. You can't give a vaccine to a person who has not been exposed to dengue virus earlier. You can give it only to person who has suffered from dengue earlier.
That's right.
That is very interesting.
I had dengue like
So
2 years ago. So yeah, they treated, once you've got dengue, okay, you're positive now dengue, come get in and we treat you.
now you take a vaccine. Yes, now you
That's
can take a vaccine and feel safe.
That's right.
But if a naive person takes a dengue vaccine, he might be in for more trouble when he gets gets exposed to the dengue virus.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what will happen with COVID.
Yeah, well, like I can imagine, like grandmother would say, have some garlic, ginger, lemon, vitamin C, honey. Good morning. Good morning.
Hello.
Morning.
Morning,
Hello.
Dr. Chen.
Good morning.
Good morning. So, Professor Babulak, if I could add to the discussion, in India, what they are doing is that, yes, as you rightly said, the grandmother recipes are coming out. The people are becoming more and more conscious towards developing that immunity. because even if you have a vaccine, which is going to take quite some time,
Getting
and
some
that, that
connection
testing and all that
issue.
phase.
Hello,
Yes.
hello.
So there is no guarantee that there won't be another virus that will come along, and the cycle will start all over again. So the best thing that people are being advised now is to be careful, is to maintain more hygiene standards and develop more immunity. You could you could develop that yourself. You can't really expect nothing else to happen. So that's what the focus now is.
Agree.
Yeah, you're very
Good
right.
afternoon, good evening, everyone. I mean, like I was actually doing a couple of tech things, so I was not able to greet everyone. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Educators this week, and of course, Professor Babula, we have a full house now. We can, in fact, we've also gone online and live. We still have good 5 minutes, but we're still live, so we can still have this conversation. It was a lovely conversation that we had in the Corona. Everybody's talking about in fact, like Professor Babulak was talking about, and Dr. Kakule and Dr. Gokhale also just said, I'm also having my little turmeric tea. Never had it.
That's a good advice.
That's nice.
I mean, like, exactly, that's how it is. It has changed us forever.
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. Good morning, Dr. Franco.
I would go for my single malt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Probably that has developed some immunity.
To each his own, actually.
Each his own. Absolutely.
Yeah. Whatever develops your
customized
immunity,
medicine.
Yeah, customized medicine.
Architects had started designing houses with one isolation room also added.
Yes.
But it's interesting that when we talk about this,
Ventilators.
as educators, we should perhaps, as soon as anybody has news about, say, either best remedy or whatever, that could help prevent or heal, definitely we should share among us all these news, because, it's like, as educators, I like to think we are like families, we are like brothers and sisters. And, we are ambassadors of hope and, of course, knowledge and sharing that light of enlightenment for young people. But I feel really concerned about students, and surely as you are, and children and young people, that they're at the beginning of life. And the world should be beautiful and wonderful for all of them. And so hopefully, with the scientists and everyone, we can pull up and find out the way forward to have a better life, and continue for everybody on the planet. This planet, I often say to my students, sunrise and sunset and blue skies belongs to everybody. There's, regardless of where you are geographically or how. And so, it's the ultimate message of hope. It's just, that trying to figure out how we can move forward. Anyway, I think we are just on time. We have about 1 or 2 minutes. I noticed colleague from Germany, Guten Morgen, Franco, Dr. Franco,
Morning.
Gabriela.
Grüß Gott. Good morning.
Grüß Gott.
Good morning.
Yeah, welcome. Yeah, I don't know if you joined us just now, but we had a little kind of pre-chat, and we are very privileged. We have an expert biologist, so we discussed a little bit of COVID crisis, which I think everybody is concerned. But anyway, so welcome everyone. I'm honored to have all of you joining this session, and thank you, Dr. Gupta, for bringing us all together and organizing this wonderful event. I think this is series 8 now, in educators webinars, and I really like to say that the World Assessment Council has a mission, and they do the mission very well and honorably, because there's a lot of ideas that everybody's concerned, and I've been teaching on basically in quite a different places on 4 different continents, and everybody, every faculty is discussing, issues that how and what. And today's topic, before we start, is fascinating, and it's also very tricky and very complicated proctoring. But I should start with this basically statement. It's a brief statement. The World Assessment Council is on a mission to empower every educator on earth to go online and use it as a tool of enhancing learning outcomes and greater experience for the students. We do the same by continuously engaging with influencers in the education domain, such as yourself, people who have proven record of success and a lot of experience. And also we try to look at that vision expands to, educators beyond this panel. And of course, we establish a dialogue and with distinguished speakers and, try to enlighten colleagues and how to move forward. So the subject of the discussion today is proctoring, and I was given a couple of questions, but before we start, I would like to invite you to introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about your work background and whatever, interests and perhaps even your university and how, how is the situation developing today in this new kind of world with COVID-19. So whoever, please, I can invite you individually or anybody, just raise your hand and introduce yourself, please. Okay, so you want me to delegate it, so I will delegate. We have two ladies, so I'd like to invite Dr. Sen. Please tell us about yourself and welcome.
Thank you so much, Professor Babulak. Very good afternoon to all of you. I'm Dr. Kakuli Sen. I am a professor of organizational behavior and human resource management. I currently have about 25 plus years of work experience. I have worked for 10 years in the corporate, and for the last 15 plus years, I'm in the academics. I teach undergraduate, postgraduate, and doctoral students. And I'm currently the director for the ILM Institute for Higher Education, New Delhi. It is a group of institutions which has a university and total 5 campuses, and it offers undergraduate and postgraduate degrees in design, engineering, management, of course, and humanities and law. And our motto is that, we want to make all our students global, responsible, and an inclusive mindset. So that is what we are working towards. We are heavy into the liberal education, where we believe that every student should be able to develop should be undergoing a basket of courses and developing a portfolio that would make them ready, not just for 2 years, 3 years, or 5 years from now, but for future ready. So we are looking at developing the attitude and the right kind of skills. And my research areas are leadership and entrepreneurship. And today I'm extremely happy to be here with such learned co-panelists and discussing something which is very pertinent in today's time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I like the idea what you said, the attitude. Indeed, it's all about the attitude. When students graduate and they move on in life. And so most welcome. Dr. Franco.
Yeah, thank you very much. A warm welcome to everybody from Austria. I'm very pleased to be a panelist on this very exciting topic and very important topic. My name is Gabriele Frankel. I work at the Department of E-Learning at the University Klagenfurt in Austria. I started building the department about 12 and a half years ago and was university assistant in the area of media communication and before that. And my main interests are online testing, using new tools, videos, and innovative didactic concepts for the improvement of learning, as well as collaboration and win for all solutions, since I believe we highly need all of those to solve the problems we are facing today. And because you asked how we coped with the situation of COVID-19, of course, it was a really, really busy time. So we had a lot to do to really make all of our teaching to 100% online. We do blended learning for many years, but of course, full online learning wasn't the case at our university. And we managed it somehow, but of course, there are some things lacking. We try to compensate it with synchronous video meetings and so on, with that new didactical concept, but of course it's an issue. And I really like it when you said we should be ambassadors of hope, and we should be, yes, a light tower for our students. I really like this idea. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you. Warm welcome. Dr. Well, I don't see all your names, so I'm going to start. Dr. Hall, welcome. Good morning.
Thank you. Yes, I would have to say good morning, good afternoon, and as well as good evening. I believe that we are all in different time zones. Of course, in Malaysia, this is 8 p.m. in the evening. Well, it's good to be here virtually, discussing this item. My name is Chin Kwan Ho. I'm from Multimedia University, Malaysia. I am trained as a computer scientist, okay, but I'm taking on the role of the vice president for academic and as well as international relations. So, across the country, from the month of March, right until July, we have been very busy converting our normal face-to-face classes, to online. And I believe my colleague here, Dr. Bucharan Singh, his university is online university. So I believe that he faced less challenges compared to many other conventional universities. And we have been doing well. I think both the staff and the students have been doing well, adapting. And of course, in the past couple of weeks, especially this week, we see that the number of cases in Malaysia for COVID-19 cases is shooting up now. And we are now scratching our heads. Should we go back to online because our students just came back to campus? So this is, I think, an interesting and as well as challenging time. So just let me give a quick overview of Multimedia University. We are a private university. We have 12,000 students. We are a subsidiary of Telecom Malaysia, Malaysia's largest telco. And we have 3 campuses, one in Kuala Lumpur, which is just 20 minutes from the international airport. So do drop by if you're around the area. When the situation clears up, we have another campus 2 hours down south, and the third campus is in a state called Johor. It is 30 minutes from Singapore. So that's a quick introduction. Thank you.
Thank you, and warm welcome. Thank you. Well, I did work with Malaysians, a number of different conferences. My colleague, Professor David Al-Abbas, in simulations and modeling. So there's a lot of events we work with your colleagues in that area. And a warm welcome. Dr. Sai, please introduce yourself. Dr. Gurcharan.
Sorry, right. Okay, sorry. Right. A very good day, Prof. and esteemed colleagues. My name is Gurcharan Singh, and I'm from Malaysia. Some people might be wondering, how come you are in Malaysia? You're supposed to be in Punjab or in India. My forefathers came to Malaysia at the turn of the 20th century, so around 1920s, 1930s. Parents were born here, so I'm third generation Malaysian now. And I work at the Open University Malaysia, which is actually the first online and distant learning university. Now, as what my colleague, Dr. Chin has said, we are actually an ODL, so Open and Distant Learning University, started 20 years ago. And all the while, it has been, just like Dr. Frankel, it has been actually part of it. It's blended learning, and part of it has been on online assessment as well, especially assignments and all that. But with the turn of these events, what we have done is we have adapted a little bit and brought on online delivery of the teaching as well as assessment. So it was not so daunting as such, because we already had the platform. As rightly put by Dr. Jin, a lot of conventional universities had a very, a daunting task of converting their normal conventional method to online, but we kind of adjusted a little bit, and we were able to then deliver and go on. Now, Open University Malaysia has got about 36,000 active learners. We have about 30,000 undergraduates, 6,000 postgraduates, and we have 35 learning centers around the nation. So more or less you find Open University Malaysia practically everywhere in the nation, because we're separated. Yeah, we have Sabah Sarawak in the Borneo Island, and even there we have quite a number of centers. And the interesting thing is, from this number of active learners, more than 95% are working adults. We have ages spanning from 30 to 80 plus. So you've got that 50, 60 years, difference in the age of the learners. So that makes it very interesting and challenging at times, because especially when we are talking about online, we are talking about using the technology, then you will readily think that these younger people are more techno-savvy, as opposed to the older ones. Right. I have been here now for more than 4 years, 4.5 years. I was before this in the Ministry of Education for more than 25 years. And in Ministry of Education, I spent about 20 years in the institute where we developed leadership. And we did training for all the school heads in Malaysia. There are about 10,000 public schools in Malaysia. So we train the school heads and the senior management of the schools. And also, I was also in charge, and I was also given the lead to come up with this paper for the aspiring heads. So we have got a licensure program in Malaysia for aspiring heads. You got to go through that and then get your license, and then you become the head. In OUM, we have 40 plus programs and 20 plus programs for postgraduates. And I think the principle that we hold is lifelong learning, evident through the age of our learners. And this is to allow everyone to learn. So I'm looking forward today to have a good discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, you may have answered already a couple of questions that we've been asking. Dr. Grewal, please.
Hello, good evening, or I'll say good afternoon, and also good morning to everybody present here. I joined the Indian Army in 1963, and then after 4 years of training and 35 years of service in the Army, I retired in 2002. And after that, I joined the academia. In the Army, I'm a civil engineer by profession. I was chief engineer in the Border Roads Organization. And in addition, I was head faculty of civil engineering in College of Military Engineering at Pune in India. And I was also a professor in our Defense Services Staff College at Wellington, which trains officers of the ranks of majors and lieutenant colonels. And we have a fairly good representations from different armies there, including First World Armies. Almost 80 officers from abroad come there. My areas of expertise are in perspective planning, developing inter-institutional collaborations, student relations, and pedagogical developments. In addition, I also have practical experience of raising 3 institutions, higher educational institutions, from scratch to their path of growth. 3 institutions, I was the founder, head of those institutions. One, an engineering college, one ICICI Manipal Academy. It was a joint venture between ICICI Bank and Manipal University to train their managers, and then Chitkara University. After retirement from the Army, I initially joined Manipal Group, and I was heading their Sikkim Manipal Institute of Technology as director. and later became the Pro Vice Chancellor there. Finally, I shifted to ICICI Manipal Academy. And therefore, I had a good exposure of working in the field as well as in the academia. And in 2008, I shifted to Northern India, where I became Vice Chancellor of Chirkara University. And there I served till 2018. And in February 2018, I retired. This university, Chirkara University, is one of the premier institutions in Northern India, and it has got its own brand name. We have two campuses, one in Himachal Pradesh and one in Punjab. Himachal Pradesh is a hill state in Northern India. And after having retired now, I have picked up my third career, started on my third career. I have turned an author. I have just finished writing a book on envisioning Indian higher education. And I started working on my second book. The first book will be out in about 2 months' time. It is basically deals with higher education in India. And as you know, the higher education in India is in a state of flux. For the past 14 years, I will say since 2006, January 2006, India has been setting up one university per week and 5 colleges per day. And for the next 10 to 15 years, we will continue with this trend. Today, we have about 1,100 universities, and we need approximately 1,500 universities in India, and if not more. Today, we have approximately 34 million students in the higher education sector, and by the year 2030, we'll have approximately 70 million students in the higher education sector. So we have to develop that capacity. But there is a lot required to be done as far as quality of higher education that is being provided is concerned. And I'm trying to do my, put in my own humble contribution in this direction as to how we can improve the quality of higher education in India. So I'm excited, and I'm here basically to learn from you all today. I think what Dr. Gurcharan Singh said, that it is lifelong learning, and for me it is still, despite the fact that I have one foot in the grave, I still would like to learn from you all today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You're most welcome. Well, you know, you touch interesting topic. You know, indeed, the universities' numbers should increase, but at the same time, you know, for benefit of students, to make sure that the universities do deliver best quality of education. Because, you know, it's a challenge. You know, you have to get new faculty, you have to get proper resources. We'll touch on it, I'm sure, during the discussion. Dr. Gokal, hello, are you with us?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I am. Hello, everybody. Am I audible?
Yeah, we hear you. I hear you.
Yeah, am I audible? Okay, right. Thank you. I am Dr. Shishir Gokhale. I am a physician, medical professional, and a professor in medical microbiology, infectious diseases, and immunology. I did work in Indian Army for a short stint of 27 years, and since last few decades, I am in the medical education as well. Over here, I am in Nepal, in Manipal College of Medical Sciences, which is a part of the Manipal group, about which just now you heard from Brigadier Grewal. And I had heard about him when I was working in Manipal also, and met him also a couple of times. I'm here in Nepal since last 12 years, but I've been in medical education even when I was in Army, because I worked as a professor at Armed Forces Medical College, Pune as well. Our college over here is primarily aiming at providing medical education, nursing education to create or to enthuse young population in becoming competent, confident, and compassionate medical professionals. We got about 1,000 students on the campus at various levels of their studies. We have been primarily a face-to-face education system till COVID hit us like everybody else. And then we had to quickly reconfigure ourselves into online teaching and now even online assessment. I had to play some role in that because I had a little bit of earlier experience in this field. So we created our own team in our own college and also helped the Kathmandu University, with which we work, to start and teach online, as well as now we are conducting the online examinations. And today's topic of proctoring is very, very pertinent and important, more so not only for face-to-face examination, but more so for the online examinations and assessment. Uh, my prime area has been infectious diseases and research and education in that, but I have been also involved into academic planning, academic delivery, and assessment. Uh, we are learning a lot. I have been part of this WAC watchers as a watcher for various activities which have been happening over the last few weeks. I've learned a lot from this group, and as Brigadier Grewal has said, I look forward to learning more from everybody and sharing our experiences as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much and warm welcome. Thank you. So, well, you know, it's fascinating. It seems like we are really lucky, Dr. Gupta. We got exceptional scholars and people with very valuable experience. You know, it seems like this unites us in that effort of kind of setting up the vision. And of course, the viewers, people who will watch the panel on YouTube, hopefully, you know, they might come back to us and have some comments or suggestions as well. So I start with the first question. And again, we are about just kind of, as far as logistics, we have about 1 hour and 10 minutes remaining. And what I'll do this time, I will try to kind of make sure that we have all kind of good kind of understanding of the question. So I'm going to also forward you the question in chat room so you can kind of read the question just in case. And as we go through kind of the question, I just want to kind of make sure that you all give your comments, and again, just raise your hand. And towards the end of discussion, everybody made kind of a comment. We have some room for discussion and maybe commenting on colleagues' comments. So the first question is online proctoring a necessary evil, or is the technology ready for the completely secure and zero breach exams? And just before this question, I even saw the question, I saw the articles and I asked, I also included them in the chat room from the higher education, which is online proctoring and cheating. And I see colleagues, you know, the Liberty University is a large university that offers online education to over 95,000 students all over the world. And colleagues who are working in that area of online, like we have, for example, just to give you appreciation, there's a dean of college and of course then associate dean of online and residential. So there are two major kind of streams, but now with COVID, the residential has moved to online, and we adopted Canvas technology. We work with the blackboards, and now seems to be Canvas is a new platform that is recommended or quite popular in North America and UK. I don't know, are you familiar with Canvas, everybody? Canvas, I maybe write it down for you, Canvas. And you're most welcome to look at it. I think they have an academic version as well, so you may explore. So with this, in my view, online proctoring is essential. In any learning, you have to examine a student, you have to get a feedback, and you measure that learning progression. Is technology ready for it? Yes and no, because is it an open book exam? Is it closed book exam? Is it, does the technology guarantee that student is actually answering the question on its own, or does he or she has people, in the background helping? So it's all yours now. So please, you have a first question, and anybody just raise your hand and feel free to comment. Yeah, please. Dr. Sand, I saw your hand first.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. So I would like to put across my views on this. So when you say, is online proctoring a necessary evil? And is the tech ready for completely secure and zero breach exams? So I'll go back a little in the sense that technology is here to stay. In our education, technology is taking a bigger role. We were all doing face-to-face, classes. Earlier, much earlier, they were just chalk in the talk, and then we were more into interactive classes. Then we moved on to blended learning. So gradually, we are introducing technology by and by into our teaching. And it will eventually have probably a bigger role. The teacher's role will become more of a facilitator, and technology will play a role in all those areas where it can play a role. Like there are teachers' role is absolutely unquestionable, but at the same time, there are certain things which are repetitive, which can be done by the technology, which could make the teachers do something more productive at that point of time. Having said that, my opinion is that while we are at our institute also bringing in online proctoring as a practice, etc., but at the same time, the question that is it a necessary evil? In my opinion, it is neither absolutely necessary nor is it evil. When I say that it is not, in my view, not absolutely necessary, I would like to evaluate that what are we testing when we are taking an examination or an assessment? What exactly are we testing? Are we testing memory, or are we testing the application of what has been learned? Where we are taking a memory test, then definitely online proctoring would make more sense. But at the same time, if we are looking more in terms of the application of a concept or a theory, the teacher's role becomes extremely important when the teacher is setting up the assessment. So when we are making the questions, you said, the the open book examinations, open book examinations are a misnomer. If you have never opened the book earlier and have not really, internalized and understood, it is no point, open book you'll just keep looking and actually not get anything, because there is a reason why the faculty or the teacher has given an open book exam, because in all probability the question is an application oriented question, wherein the writing or the duplication of the concepts or the theories is of very little marks there, if I may say so. It is more in terms of how do you use that concept or the theory or the data, and solve a problem, take a decision. How do you do that? The process. So in my opinion, it cannot be said that it should not be absolutely necessary. Depends on the purpose of your assessment. What is your criteria? What exactly is your learning outcome out of that you are looking at? And evil, definitely it is not an evil. It will be required at certain places, and it is important, so that not just that, there is a underlying thought that probably online proctoring is because we are not trusting our students, and we are getting into their systems and even kind of monitoring their eye movement and whatever files they're opening, etc. So we are completely hijacking almost like their system and making them stay still there, so that we are noting how many times is there someone else in the room, did he talk to somebody, did he open some other file, and copy and paste. So we disable everything, etc. So there is some kind of a, issue that, there are trust issues that we are not trusting our students. So it goes on a different direction. I would rather feel that, if we are teaching something, we need to empower our students, encourage our students to allocate more value to what we are teaching them, and also help the students to see more value. Whenever we are making assessment by, in a way, kind of making the students do what they are supposed to be doing and not looking here and there, our role as a teacher also increases manifold. We should be teaching things where the students feel that this is really important to understand and to be able to apply it, than taking a memory test which the students feel that I must get some kind of help and support, and kind of look at something else which will help me clear the exam. If we are looking at a memory test, then probably we are depends on what we are looking at. If we are telling them things which will help them in life, which will help them apply and take make decisions, good decisions that will eventually work out to bigger things, we will need to give them that leverage. We will need to design our question papers in such a manner that the students are able to apply what they have learned in the class. I agree that the entrance exams, or there are certain exams where you need to know the concepts, etc. Those concepts could be easily done by way of quizzing. There are quizzes that you can do, and you can change the order of the questions also if you want to ensure that there is no cheating or mass help, etc. So that could be looked at. Our teachers' role becomes very, very important. Before we tell them how we will be changing your assessment, we also need to evaluate how and what we are teaching. That was one point. Second part of the question, which says, is the tech ready for completely secure and zero breach exams? That is one part. Is the technology ready? The other part is the technology scalable? When we are talking about using technology in the in the assessments, are the takers ready in a country like India, or or other countries of our stature or economic stature? Can they afford? Is it scalable, or is it like going to be restricted to a small little group, or the urban, or the well technology wise well endowed colleges and students? Or is it that it can go to all levels? Can it be done at a mass scale? Or if it is going to be done at a mass scale, there are certain requirements, like the technology, like the device, the internet connection. You have to be in a room where there is nobody else in the room. There has to be no background noise, no movement, etc. Is it possible? Can it be doable on the student's part? So we have to see that as well. So I feel that there are, of course, bringing in technology for the greater good and for more learning is definitely welcome, and we are going to be using more and more. But we also need to see that if we are using technology, online proctoring, where are we using it? What are we using it for? Can more and more people use it? Is it scalable? And the fourth component is that, is there a feedback that is going to come in? How is the major purpose of the assessment is also feedback, that I must know how did I fare in the exam, where did I go wrong, how could have I improved. So what is the feedback system in that online proctoring? While it saves time of the teacher, the teacher must also indulge in that feedback, that how can one improve. So that is my view of, while I welcome, I would also like to plug in the gaps when we use technology. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, I mean, you have touched a very important point, the whole concept of learning, and also the concept of examining. And I think, you put it very nicely. It's the application. In other words, the whole process of training, to become competent in the subject of studies, there are different levels. There are some students who perform extremely well on the exam, and yet they cannot talk much about the subject. And yet you have students who may perform very poorly on the exam, and yet they are very bright and they're very capable. I had students who in the classroom, they were so brilliant students, and yet with the exam, they just couldn't perform. So it's a tricky dilemma. And of course, with technology, I agree that unfortunately, we are not there yet. You know, not there's a lot of schools, a lot of geographical regions, and I work, you know, in Asia, Southeast Asia, and South Pacific, and Middle East. So I've seen places where technology, you're right, it's an asset. It's a very expensive asset, and not everybody can afford that infrastructure. And so I think this is another kind of level of development that we have to think of, you know, and of course, a lot of universities already do that, but still bridge universities, promote collaboration, promote resource sharing, and making sure that, you know, the education is accessible for every child on this planet. Because, you know, indeed, the next genius, you know, may be just somewhere in the middle of nowhere. That some people say, oh, that's a forgotten part of the world, but yet there's a little girl, little boy, and that could be a genius that may save humanity in years to come. So this is something that we have to, you know, somehow promote that collaboration, but also sharing the resource, because, you know, there are in world ranking universities, of course, Oxford, MIT, Cambridge, and Harvard, and you know, they are at the same time, as far as infrastructure, very privileged universities. But yet, I like to think that, you know, there could be a brilliant student anywhere on the planet who could be a Oxford caliber or MIT caliber or whatever caliber. It's just all they need is a proper training and access to proper resource. So thank you very much, Dr. Zen. I saw Dr. Gokal raising hand just before you did. Dr. Gokal, hello, are you with us?
Yes, please.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I'm here. Yes. Thank you. Kakoli has brought out very, very important and pertinent points. I would like to go a step before that. Two things come to my mind is that aren't we thinking when we are saying online proctoring just a way of duplicating what we had been doing on a face-to-face ground? Something like online teaching, lots of colleges have moved simply by what they used to do on a face-to-face teaching, have they shifted onto online teaching. Perhaps you need a different approach in that. Similarly, proctoring, we are thinking of online proctoring because we had always been proctoring when there was face-to-face assessment, when there was a written assessment. Perhaps we need to change our thinking in that fashion also. But first and foremost, is proctoring at all required? We need to go further back as to what is the aim with which the student comes to a school or a college. Does he come to gain knowledge? Does he come to expand his way of thinking? Or does he come to get a degree certificate which will put him into a job market? And perhaps never use whatever courses he has taken to get that degree in the job or in his life in future. Most probably 90% of the graduates which pass out from most of the schools and colleges, unless it's perhaps a professional college like engineering, medical, or somewhere else, where they are taught the skills which they are going to use in subsequent life, most of the other places, perhaps students don't really learn the skills which they require in the next life, but they just get a degree. In that case, since you want to create an level playing field and you want to compare one with the other, you need a proctoring, because you are measuring everybody by one particular scale and you expect people to come up to that particular scale to be declared pass or fail. Now here the stakes for the students are pretty high. Either he makes or he does not make it. And therefore there is a lot of temptation for him to use unfair means to be able to achieve that piece of paper called degree, which will embark him into a life. At that place, perhaps proctoring is very important because we are just testing them for minimal achievement or not, and everybody should get a fair skill. But if you look at today's context, we are trying to put in education so that the people develop their minds, broaden their views, and apply whatever they learn in their life. So, we are not going to measure everybody by the same skill. We rather would be looking for what new ideas or thoughts this student has brought in by getting through this particular course or this particular program. In that case, I guess proctoring has got no value. Kakali talked about open book examination. I would rather think about open mind assessment. In higher education, particularly where we are developing their skills and knowledge, we should not be testing them against set answers. If someone comes out with a entirely different perspective, entirely different knowledge, entirely different aspect of a particular problem, or entirely different method of solving a particular problem, that's wonderful. That's what we want. That's how the knowledge is generated. That's how the science progressed. And that's how the society will progress. So for such situations, I don't think we require proctoring, because what we require is the person to be able to garner as much knowledge, as much information, as many thoughts from as many places as he can, whichever way it could be, by discussion, by looking at book, by looking at web, or just plain simple thinking, and perhaps create a network in his mind to put a thought forward. The cell phones, the missiles, the Sputniks, the uh, star, and everything, all that we have achieved has not been achieved because we asked people to stick to particular thing. We allowed them to grow, and that's what our aim should be. So I think proctoring is not required when we are allowing people to grow. Proctoring may be required when we want to stifle their growth and rather measure them on the same skills. Is it an evil? Well, you can have fire to light a lamp, or you can have fire to burn a house down. Proctoring by itself is not evil. It's how we employ it that will determine whether it's evil or whether it is facilitator or whether it is good. In situations where we want them to be stimulated, I think let's get away with proctoring. But to get away with proctoring, our assessments need to change. We need to not compare one assessment with the other and say this fellow has done better than that fellow. No, perhaps both could have given entirely different perspective, entirely different aspect, entirely different way of solving a problem, and both need to be accepted. So if we get rid of the grading in assessment, if we get rid of the pre-designed scale on which people should stand, and if we have open mind to assess what they have written or what they have presented, maybe as a portfolio, maybe as an essay, or whatever it is, a submission, then we don't need to proctor. We rather need to give them an open space. Today we need to understand this in terms of technology. Howsoever uh, big brother watching 1984 kind of a technology we might develop to detect my eye movements, my pupillary dilatation, my pulse rate, all kind of biomarkers to see whether I'm looking here, there, or not. But I might just have my natural tendency of looking at the sky and stretching when I'm thinking. A proctoring tool might pick it up as an attempt at cheating. So we need to look into that aspect also, that we cannot design something which will fit for everybody. People have different ways of physical activity or changing their position depending upon the type of thought process which they are going through. I might start scratching my head if I have got lots of problems coming up and I'm not able to make it out, or I might just smile if a eureka moment comes. Both can be conceived as cheating. So let's look into it as well.
Thank you, Dr. Barkha. Well, very important issues. Indeed, it is all about mind developing. And education is part of that training. And of course, we often say, education never ends. The Iranian proverb says, a mind that learns, keep learning, it's like a fresh water that moves. And so basically, it is a concept of learning. Often when students ask me about my learning experience, I feel like, I almost envy students that they are young. They have so many years ahead of them to learn more, because I feel like I'm at the very beginning of learning. And, that's the magic of that mindset that we develop through this. But perhaps, both technical and connecting to Dr. Sen's comments, I think, indeed, it's important to look at how do we assess, and also perhaps the subject matter, because, in mathematics, actions there is definite definitions that this is as it is. So there's not much room of mathematics is very rigorous, very kind of step by step. And yet in the abstract mathematics, at the higher level, at the PhD level, it is all about ideas. So, it's a very huge contrast. I can imagine medical profession, the surgeon must perform operation. It's very delicate. And the question is, could the surgical robot compete with the physical, with the personal doctor? So a lot of very important points you raised indeed, Dr. Gokal and Dr. Sen. I want to just kind of build on this and say that where we are in 21st century, perhaps this discussion is the beginning of new era of thinking how the education, what's the purpose of whole educational establishment, which is actually second question. So yeah, almost moving ahead. Next, please. And if I may just remind you, we have about another hour, less than an hour to complete a couple of other questions. So please, next person. Comments on question. Yep. Dr. Franco or who? Dr. Grewal, please.
Basically, what I would like to say is that, first of all, why have we gone online? There are certain aspects of learning, remembering, comprehension, and application of knowledge. Perhaps with other tools, we can perhaps assess. But online assessment has got one big advantage where it can assess a student's higher order learning skills. That is of analyzing, evaluating, and creating. And in case you have a well-designed system which is dynamic, and a student's response to the first question generates the next question, then perhaps you will be able to assess the student's ability to analyze, evaluate, and create better. And therefore, we need to perhaps look at the things in a holistic manner as to why is online assessment good for the system. We do trust our students, but we have to also put across to them that we want to prevent academic dishonesty. Number of studies have been carried out which indicate that students are more likely to cheat in unproctored environment. There are studies which indicate that almost 1 in 3 students have cheated in that type of environment. And so therefore, to provide a level playing field to all students and to ensure that honest students are rewarded, there is a need for proctoring. You cannot just have a laissez-faire type of environment. And the question is whether it is evil. Now, first of all, the first question that needs to be answered is, what is evil? Evil is morally bad or wicked. Is proctoring morally bad or wicked? Answer is clearly no. Evil is also malicious. Is proctoring malicious? The answer is certainly no. But there is another aspect too of evil, which is causing an undesirable condition, which people who are against proctoring are trying to highlight. They have two main concerns for that. One is the privacy of the student, and the second is the anxiety level, that if he's appearing for an exam, which is being proctored, and that too by a stranger, and he's continuously being monitored, his level of anxiety goes up. And they say that in case there is a student who is under stress or anxiety, uh, or he feels that he's under surveillance, he may find himself, he may not be able to answer the questions well, or he may not be able to do justice to his examination. And therefore, for that purpose, we need to ensure that the students are made as comfortable as possible as far as examination is concerned. And why do we, what is the purpose of education? It is not only to provide him domain knowledge or multidisciplinary knowledge, it is to prepare him for life. And can we say that when a student progresses in life after having left an educational institution, he will not have any stress in his working environment? I believe in one aspect that in a curriculum, test or assessment is part of the curriculum, and that also teaches a student something. You assess a student, but simultaneously try to teach him something. So when you are exposing a student to stress in an examination, so you are preparing him for life, for what challenges he has to meet later on in life. So therefore, you prepare him during his student days, during his learning part of the curve. You prepare him to face stress, prepare him how to handle those type of situations. And for that, we have to develop technologies. Now, is our technology ready for that? I will say that we have started with an arms race. You develop a technology, and the student develops a counter technology to cheat. So therefore, this arms race will continue. You cannot put an end to it. And therefore, you take another step. So therefore, the question of are we ready will always be there.
I agree.
We need to keep updating our skills. We need to keep updating our technology. We need to keep updating the methods which we employ to test a student. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. You have raised very important questions and issues. I mean, yet again, you mentioned that stress level. And as a part of training, I was in military too, in the Air Force. You have to be kind of, there are a lot of difficult situations when we went through the training like you did and everybody, in military. So it's also kind of part of that portfolio that, students become stronger, ready for life. But of course, at the same time, it's a delicate balance because there's a mind's training and of course the emotional part, physical part, and whatever, even spiritual part of development of the young individual is very diverse. And of course, as educators, we try to keep that balance and of course, make sure that they raise all these pillars of life. So indeed, technology and that level of stress of somebody is looking over my shoulder is always stressful. So I think, we are at the beginning yet. It seems like there's a lot of proven records of success in proctoring, but also as students becoming more technology savvy, they become innovative and they cheat smart. Yeah, so they become smart cheaters, which is kind of, perhaps naively stated, but there are also a lot of wonderful students, and they would never cheat even if they would have an opportunity to do that. So it comes, it's a question of character. How do we train the character, through this, which I think Dr. Sen and Dr. Gokal already mentioned during this educational process, that they become dignified person, and so they become proud of what they answer. They become proud of their own statement that they make as students. Thank you, very valuable. Next, please. Um, Next colleague, want to comment? Please, Dr. Hor.
Yes, I think it's interesting to hear the views of our colleagues here. One thing is for certain, a common theme that has been brought up is actually we should take this opportunity to look at how we do assessment. Right? We talk about open book, open mind, and so on. So I think for many institutions, this lockdown has actually caused many to rethink assessment. For example, for us, we have converted, many of the the assessment of learning outcomes from exam-based to actually alternative assessment. And when we think long and hard, it is actually possible to do. So that is the lesson that we have learned. But since we are talking about online proctoring, I think it's good if we can imagine or understand what we mean by online proctoring. What are the methods by which online proctoring is implemented? So let me share my understanding. At least I have four in my mind. Number one is the passive monitoring of applications that run on a student's computer. So imagine a student actually logging into your LMS and they are doing the online exams. So you have this proctoring software at the back, which just monitors what are the software that the students are using, whether he's switching from a browser to another application to to a web browser, searching Google and so on. So this is what I call passive monitoring. It does not involve your video or your microphone yet. So this is, I think, very passive monitoring. The second one would be basically more active in the sense that this is quite common. This is the second one would involve active restriction on the software that you use. So many online proctoring providers, I won't name them, but they provide some sort of like a lockdown browser, right? So when you use a lockdown browser, you are not able to switch to any other applications except for the approved applications, right? For example, earlier on, the host, you have, if you look at the chat, there's a mention of Canvas. So if you use Canvas as your learning management system, so you have a online proctoring software that actually plugs into Canvas, and they have their lockdown browser, and you're not able to move from Canvas. You're just there using the software. So this is second. And my third and fourth, idea of online proctoring is the use of video surveillance or video / audio surveillance. So you have the passive video surveillance where we have providers that actually run some sort of AI behind, and whenever something funny happens, it will flag. So there's no human involved. And the fourth one is actually active video surveillance with live proctors. So these are live human proctors, and with this sort of live video surveillance with live proctors, students will feel anxious, right? As brought up by Brigadier Grewal. So it's like somebody looking over your shoulders, right? So this is, of course, these are the, to my mind, these are the kinds of online proctoring. But so let me go from more of a privacy side. You see, if you last 3 months, I was looking intensely into some of the options that we have in terms of online proctoring. And if you look into the privacy policy or even the privacy statement of such online proctoring tools, what is actually quite worrying is that they mentioned that yes, they collect data, but they will also provide data to third-party analytics providers. So that is actually an issue for many universities in terms of privacy. It may be all right between the service provider and the university, because there is a contract for processing the students' data in the sense that they are keeping the live stream. But when this service provider actually pass the data to a third party to do analytics, so that is actually the issues that comes in. And And if you read closely the privacy or even the legal document, what it says is that you will have to obey or you have to comply with the terms and conditions of service for the third-party analytics provider. So this is actually something which a lot of universities are bringing up, right? So yeah, so that is actually my point of view. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Hall. You have raised very important thing, and you actually touched on the second question, which I'm going to pose. And there are a couple of things that interconnect. So if you let me, I'm going to pose the third question as well. And the reason I'm doing it now, that gives us a little bit of overview. We have to cover about 6 more questions, and we're getting shorter on time. So fundamentally, these 2 questions, and also the first question, it kind of covers everything. But we look at, second question, is online proctor imperfect yet? And I think we have discussed it very well. Look at the value of education. What is the, contribution to students' learning? At the same time, the third question is looking at online proctoring, necessary evil, which we did, but online proctoring, a necessary evil, and also how do we actually make sure that we teach and secure that, say, certain value, in other words, that students don't cheat and they also benefit from the exam. So if I may, let me just follow up and invite all of you to contribute to any questions, you can combine them in all and make your comments. So please, Dr. Stein, please.
So we can hear Dr. Frankel, and then because I think she's the only one who didn't get a chance to speak at all.
Yeah, please. So we have the Dr. Stein raising hand.
Yeah, right. Thank you. And it's very enlightening to hear all the views from our esteemed colleagues. Now, I would like to actually go back a little bit into getting into online learning. When many of the universities were caught by surprise during the COVID-19 pandemic, when we had restricted movements and congregations and schools were not allowed, universities until today are not allowed to really bring in full capacity of students. So what happened then was, before we even talk about online proctoring as a necessary evil, or the metaphoric evil in this case, we want to probably go back and look at how from the conventional method that was used by a lot of conventional universities, they had the difficulty of actually moving into online teaching and learning. Now, the issue that actually came up then was from not being familiar with online teaching, online learning, you now want to move from conventional method into online learning. And many universities actually were hoping and praying that the COVID-19 pandemic will be over soon, so that we do not have to go into these uncharted territories. But because they were forced to do it, we had no choice but actually to embark on this new unfamiliar territory. And then there was problem with 2 things, at least. Number one is the infrastructure. When we speak about level field of playing or level playing field, we start off at the fundamentals of infrastructure itself. We know there is the difference between the accessibility or connectivity to this internet, to this amenities between urban and rural, to even in the urban area itself, you might find some differences. So that was one challenge. The challenge was infrastructure. The very basic challenge was infrastructure. Before we could even think about proctoring, before we could even move into the next step. And the next step was the capacity of the faculty. Now, are we able from, coming up with, all the time we talk about higher order thinking skill on the Bloom's taxonomy. We would want them, as Brigadier has just rightly pointed, We want them to be on the higher level, but we are all the time, for convenience sake, giving them the lower levels because you are in a very confined and controlled space. I give you pen and paper, you answer your questions, and I'm very happy marking it because I've got the scheme. So when suddenly we move into online assessment, a lot of people were caught. And the first time when it came, the students were scoring very high. Why? Because we still kept the same assessment method and we gave it into the online. And they could readily open books and open all these Google and get all the answers. But the question now is it the problem of the students or is it the problem of our capacity? Are we able to now test them differently or are we going to do the same testing? Again, that became another evil. First, the evil was online. A lot of people said this is a necessary evil, online learning, online teaching. Then came the capacity of actually moving into coming up with proper assessment that could actually test the learning outcome of what you intended to do. So the faculty then moved. We moved then into getting higher order thinking skills. Now, the question is, if I would like to think, before we even come to proctoring, if we are able to tackle the earlier issues of this level playing field, getting proper infrastructure, well, if you talk about online proctoring, if there's no internet connectivity, forget about the proctor. If the student cannot get in, the proctor cannot get in, the student will be able to get in. So my own experience in my university here, and also I'm also reading law in another university, and even the experience there is to avoid this problem of infrastructure, to avoid this problem of connectivity. What we do is we open up at, let's say, 8 in the morning, you start downloading the question. And then you do it on your own. You don't disturb the bandwidth. You don't disturb it anymore. But after 12 hours, you come up, then you put it up again. So that is to really control so that we have that little pockets of time where students could download and then upload. That comes the question of their cheating. Now, I will probably comment on this later about probably the last question. But again, what we are seeing here are layers of challenges. And to go through, proctoring is probably at the end, because once my infrastructure is proper, once I have the capacity to come up with a question, let's say, then I talk about online proctoring. And do students necessarily cheat? That's the question. Thank you.
Agree. Thank you. Thank you. Very valuable. And, you mentioned now, because I believe that you all have access to questions already. So I'm going to just pose the question 4, which kind of go back to discussion. I think Dr. Sen and Dr. Gokal and Dr. Ho already mentioned on trust. And of course, your direct comment on infrastructure goes with Dr. Ho comment on, the software and applications and all these tools that are related to examination. So let me just post everybody, if I may. I'm going to post question following up, and we will connect these questions because, like it or not, the answering questions that are actually combined. So it's hard to separate them. They're also interdependent. So question of trust, and the follow-up question is also the undercut the value of online proctoring, because you have some students that will outwit any system. They're very smart. We already mentioned that as well. But you also mentioned an interesting question, that is to say that, ultimately I work as a director on ICT project, and I know with Japanese colleagues that it's a different environment, where you are in middle of Tokyo or Seoul, Korea, or Harvard, Boston, or anywhere. But if you're in South Pacific and all these small islands are connected through the satellite connection, there is not much of connectivity. It's not guaranteed. So indeed, it's a very challenging, and many parts of, I can imagine a lot of countries are still underdeveloped as far as technology. I went to Surrey in UK, the 5G research center, but it's a mecca of, multiple input-output antennas, but you don't see that in many places because geography complicates things. And I agree with your comments. So it is indeed infrastructure, ultimately technology, accessibility. So everybody, Dr. Frankel, you want to comment, please? Please, bitte.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm so impressed by all these brilliant ideas and comments about learning and assessment. I'm really impressed. Thank you all for this, for sharing your ideas. And if I'd like to add something to the utility of online proctoring, outweighed by the negative impact it may have on student trust or certain student population, I think it's not online proctoring which has a negative impact. I think it's our culture and our way to treat our students and our colleagues. And I do dream of a world where we no longer need proctoring, and I believe such a world is possible to a certain degree. Unfortunately, I think it's, at least in the culture I live, we haven't reached this goal yet. So yes, we do proctoring at our university, and yes, we do recognize cheating as an issue. And I really could tell many anecdotes about how creative students are in terms of cheating and how much time they invested, time they could have invested in learning. But I think if we ask the question if online proctoring is the evil, I think we should find out more about the reasons why students cheat. And I don't think that's always because they are lazy. And I'm convinced very often it's due to the fear of failure, of course, and social pressure to succeed and so on. And so it's not really online proctoring which is destroying the trust of our students. I think it's our culture, sometimes the culture we live in. And our social values might be a problem. Our values lack appreciation for the individual strengths of people, for the diversity of people. And quite often we focus on the weaknesses, and this can be very destructive, leading to an unhealthy climate where there's too little room for relearning and for innovation. But when you mentioned is online proctoring a necessary evil, and will it destroy the trust of our people? I think, on the other hand, our duty as a university or college is to affirm that students have certain competencies. If you need to have a surgical procedure, for example, you're very interested in the fact that the surgeon performing it has an academic degree in medicine and surgical training and has already proven his competences and ability to do the procedure. So I am also confident that sometimes people need, based on a cherishing environment, of course, a little bit of pressure in order to move on and to develop. And so an online testing environment with proctoring might be the kind of pressure needed to activate students' hard learning and both together, this is, I think is really important, both together an appreciative environment focusing on the strengths of people with a high error tolerance combined with applying a little bit of pressure due to proctored examination might help individuals and the society as a whole, because I believe one of the greatest gifts for living beings is to enable them to live up to their full potential. And I think the world hardly needs people who live up to their full potential. And there are so many interesting approaches you mentioned, because you also mentioned that when we test online, we do the same like before. I think when we test online, but Professor Singh mentioned it, and also Professor Grewal mentioned it, that we can do new things, different things. So we can use software for testing. Of course, if we have the infrastructure, this is a huge problem, of course. If there an infrastructure, we have a problem, but we can use additional software, we can use videos, we can use serious games or simulations for testing. So we have a huge area of new possibilities for testing. And I know it's very hard to find the infrastructure, but I think maybe we can find a solution. But most of the students have a smartphone. Maybe you can use this for testing applications. So I think we have to be creative to find new ways how we can reach the students and find new ways how we can apply the potential online learning and online assessment and online proctoring is offering to really help the students, help learning, help assessing, and help the society as a whole, I think.
Thank you. Thank you. Vielen Dank. Yeah, I think you have, sum it up very well. Indeed, it seems like it's all about, and starting from Dr. Sen, it was wonderful entry that you kind of provoked that idea of reformulating the whole process of assessment. And again, Dr. Gokal very well said, with regards to mind development, of course, we don't want to create robotic students. We want to create innovative people, wonderful people that would actually contribute to society. And of course, that is something that they have to have a global perspective. But, Yet again, we also need specialists. We need experts in very narrow field and very, so they can excel in a very specific field of studies. So I think with all this, I'm happy to post question number 5, I think the last question of 6, which is kind of bringing all these questions we already discussed together, looking at, how the online proctoring technology basically prove that the value of assessment is valid, and also that we can still kind of deal with the issue of cheating. I did mention, and of course I might be naive, but I'm a professor, so I have always, I believe in a lot of ideas. But the fact is, and you mentioned very well, Dr. Franco, that students need to be ready for reality of life. And that reality of life is competition, stress, and a lot of pressure. They have to perform on deadline, and there's a lot of things. So, there's a lot of things that if you give students unlimited space to answer questions, or not really, you don't set the bars, then they may naively think that this is how world is. But there's a lot of regulations, a lot of rules in the world, in a lot of business, a lot of medicine, a lot of whatever. So I think, this is a very, very challenging, but yet very valuable discussion. And all of you, I'm so grateful, because, it's a really wonderful experience learning from you. And so hopefully I like to just kind of a little bit ahead of time to invite the team and perhaps new colleagues to join us, and we should continue in these discussions, maybe in a different format, but somehow continue to stay connected, because I think that's the value of the whole World Assessment Council mission. So let's talk about this kind of last kind of resume, which last question kind of brings it all together. And we already have touched on cheating and on all these issues. So everybody, if you just say let's give everyone, say, 3 minutes or 2 minutes kind of putting it all together. What do you see? What have you learned? And what is the message that you wish to communicate to colleagues outside who may see this video on YouTube and hopefully join us? So anybody, please, Dr. Sen.
When we are discussing this online proctoring model, we should also relate it to the context in which we are operating. The privacy issues perhaps are more accentuated in the Western world or the developed countries, whereas in the developing countries, these issues don't get highlighted that much. More than that, if you go back to the early, or rather mid 70s or early 80s, you will find in the airline industry or aviation industry, the security checks were not that stringent. And when the security checks started, there were issues related to privacy, various other issues, and slowly people have got used to it. They have been educated that this is basically for the good of the society. Same way, this online assessment systems have recently made their entry into the academia, and therefore teachers as well as students need to be educated that this is a new tool which is coming up, get used to it. These are the pros, these are the cons. And once that happens, people will get used to it. They will perhaps accept it also. It is not that major an issue. On the other hand, we have talked about designing questions which can assess the students across the complete spectrum of learning. But we must also realize, especially in the developing world, that the capacity of the faculty is limited. They may not be able to design open book questions. They may not be able to design questions which can assess the student across the complete learning spectrum. So therefore, some sort of hand-holding or some type of collaboration with the countries in the developed world And that is where the interinstitutional collaborations will come in. At the moment, the interinstitutional collaborations is limited only to student mobility, but perhaps interinstitutional collaboration in knowledge sharing and enriching the capacity of the faculty could also help. In addition to that, we could develop, just one point, we could develop the charter, a charter for students, which highlights their duties, which highlights their privileges or what they can expect. Once those things are sorted out or are made clear to the students, perhaps they will also learn how to get adjusted in the new environment.
Agree, agree. Very well. Thank you so much. This is very valuable.
We need to create an atmosphere of integrity.
Well, you know, this collaboration, which I mentioned at the very beginning, resonates throughout this discussion. And I think eventually we are in the third millennium. So the third millennium, COVID, perhaps it's a new beginning of thinking. It perhaps, you know, eventually, as it is, as challenging as it is, it inspires a lot of innovation, a lot of rethinking of the concepts that we took for granted, and everything have changed. Everything is changing. Thank you, thank you. Next, please, Dr. Sen, please.
Thank you so much, Professor Babula. So what I want to say, I know you are very short on time, so I'll try to be as brief as I can. So Professor Grewal, Brigadier Grewal brought out certain points in terms of, you know, educating people, competency building of the faculty members. I would like to go back a little, you know, further with some of the points that Dr. Shishir mentioned, or Dr. Singh, or even Dr. Ho mentioned them. And of course, Dr. Frankel brought out a very, very important point of the culture. I feel that, you know, the education process itself needs to be a lot more inclusive. We are all operating in silos. The school education is at a certain level, the college education is at a certain level, and the corporates are expecting certain skills, and the parents are expecting their children to, you know, to grow up and become something. So all these stakeholders, whether it is the school or the student or the college or the corporates or the workplace, as well as the parents, the educators, the institutions, all of us need to come together and think of education as a more inclusive process. That why are we teaching the students or kids and the young people, and what are we teaching them? As I think Dr. Shishir very correctly mentioned, that we are teaching them something which is not actually translating into skills which they are going to be using in the later years. However, we are judging them by the standards of their pass or failure, or the entire society is judging them, whether you got certain marks, whether you got into certain stream. At least in India, that is the case. Are you a very good student? Did you get into engineering? Did you get into medicine? Did you get into science? And so on. So that mindset that needs to change, and say that, okay, in the next 10 years or 20 years, these are the kind of changes that will come, for which we need these kind of skills. Then let's go back and see at the college level, what are the skills that we need to learn? At the school level, what is the kind of exposure and the opening of the minds that we may have, so that there is a pipeline that is getting prepared. Rather, why do we, and then coming back to the question, I think Dr. Gokhale also raised, that why do students cheat? The students cheat because there is a lot at stake. If they fail, then they, you know, whether they want to learn or they don't want to learn, they have to pass. They have to get a certain degree, because, you know, their job, their future depends on that degree. In India, we have very, very prestigious colleges, getting into which I mean, the entire family gets into it for like 3-4 years, and then the child gets into a college of institute of national importance. And then there is statistics where the young man is not able to cope up with that, and then either falls off that, or, you know, doesn't qualify, or gets, you know, somehow barely scrapes through it and gets into some job which he rues all his life, and then probably after retirement he gets into something that he or she actually wanted to. So that process needs to be defined. We need to be more inclusive in saying, in thinking of education as a process and not as an ends, that these are the things that you study, you pass, and then you get a degree, and then forget about the degree. We know that, at least I have experienced that students don't even remember or what they studied in the previous term. They would say that, okay, I studied something, I passed, and then that's the end of that trimester or year or whatever. Let me move on to the next level and see. There is no synchrony in what they are studying. That mindset needs to be developed, and that will be developed only if all the stakeholders come together and look at educating the society as such on multiple things, not just subject knowledge, but the sensitivity, the attitude, and the care and the trust that we are talking about. And technology will play an important role, but not an all-encompassing role. Thank you so much.
I agree. Thank you. Thank you so much. That's very valuable what you mentioned. It is a process, and indeed, it is something that we are, as educators, compared to, say, civil engineer. Civil engineer, architect builds a building, and so he can show people, "Wow, this building I built, or this bridge, I did this." But as educators, we are working on minds. We're building characters, and we are like Da Vinci's. I like to think that we are like Leonardo da Vinci. We're molding the young individual into something most beautiful, that they can become wonderful, successful human beings. And of course, that is the most desired art of all, and also most difficult art, that educators, we are united in that. So thank you very much, very valuable. And next, please, just raise your hand. Dr. Gokal, please.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. Dr. Sen has brought out very interesting aspects of it. And what I would like to just add to that is, our human society behaves more like a colony of bees. 90% of the bees are drones doing repetitive routine work, while there are only 10% who are creative, looking for new places to garner something, or queens. Unfortunately, our education system is geared to create 90% of drones who will keep on doing the routine work without using any creativity. We need to change that. We need to make people explore their own potentials in the fields which they would like to do. Why proctoring? Because cheating or dishonesty has an incentive. Well, all of us have one or the other time jumped a red light if we are not monitored. It's more prevalent even now in developing countries where there is not so many monitoring systems, but less prevalent in the Western country. And now, even if there is no monitoring, it has become a system in the drivers that they will not jump the red. We need to create something like that in the student's mind, that dishonesty is not going to further. There should not be any incentive for me to be dishonest. Rather, if we can bring that into the mind of the student, then there will not be any need for proctoring, whether face to face or whether online. Because even if we develop any kind of technologies, the human mind will further find a loophole to beat that technology and still cheat. The students are smarter because they are the ones who will tomorrow make the technology. That's why we have got hackers. Most of the youngsters are better hackers than you and me. So we cannot keep technology at par to stop hacking, stop cheating. We need to create the mentality where it becomes a disincentive. And as a last line, as you said, are open book exams trending? If they are not trending, we need to make them. And perhaps organization like WAC can play a very, very big role in filling up those gaps which Brigadier Grewal brought out, that not many teachers are used to creating assessments or questions which would be useful for students as open book or open mind. I would like to call it as an open mind assessment, we need to now shift from being teacher centric and institute centric into becoming student centric in our education as well as assessment, so that we can explore, we can allow them to explore their potentials and become better citizens, more contributing to the society. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Luca. Indeed, this is very, very important to kind of develop the character, develop the brilliance of mind. And of course, a student who has a strong and say, value principles as far as morale and honesty, they won't even consider cheating. They don't have to do that. But of course, at the same time, there's that human factor. And of course, the human nature, we can have a next panel, just talking about the nature. There's always something that is very difficult to kind of control. So Dr. Hall, please continue.
Well, I go back to the fundamental point where we are discussing online proctoring today because of the need to ensure the integrity and as well as the security of assessment. So it all boils down to assessment. And personally, I'm a believer of authentic assessment. So just let me give you an example. For the longest time, right, in computer science, we ask students in exams to write code, right? And there is no way for a student to check whether, by writing code on paper, whether that particular piece of code will actually run on a computer. And just let me, you see, for these students who go out to work, in the workplace, you see, we do not program by paper and pencil, right? We type the program into the computer and computer runs it. So, in authentic assessment, we should assess the students as how they would be functioning in the workplace. Right. So this is, I think, something that, as educators, we need to think about, are we assessing the students right or not? Right. Because I think there's a point that has been raised up earlier that students do not, see the connection between what they learn or how they assess in the university when they go out to work. Right. So we have to make sure that at the university itself or in higher education itself, the assessment is authentic to the task and also to the operating environment of the students. So that's my key point. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I agree 100%. It's all about this. Make it relevant. Make the education relevant. So eventually that education becomes, as again, all of the speakers already mentioned, becomes part of that growing. So that is essential. It has to become something that Dr. Sen, again, I come back to you mentioned, it has to be part of discussion, has to be part of life for everybody, because everybody is involved. You cannot segment, you cannot say, oh, this is what you do at home, this is what you do at school, this is what you do at high school, college, because then of course it's all students are jumping from one environment to the other. But if there is a ultimate connection and seamless kind of connectivity, then of course that makes it a very, very huge difference. Dr. Franco, please. I want to put a resume or kind of final comment on your experience and what you learn and what you would like to suggest.
I think there's so many said already, which is so important and brilliant. There's nothing much left to add, but I think online proctoring is necessary. You mentioned many times the Bloom's taxonomy of learning aims and learning outcomes. So I think at the lower levels, we need some kind of proctoring. And on the higher levels, we have the freedom to define and create new forms of assessment. And like Dr. Kanho, Professor Kanho mentioned, that we can use additional software like a programming environment for those exams that you don't have to write paper and pencil programming exams. So we developed a system at our university. It's called the Secure Exam University Environment, where you can integrate additional software in a secure environment. So since 10 years, our students write the programming exams, not with paper and pencil, but with the computer. So they use really authentic environment. And I think for those kind of assessing of knowledge, it's very important to use a kind of proctoring, but built on an area and a culture of trust, appreciation, and so on, just to say to students, okay, and we explain to students why we are proctoring them. say, okay, come on, you have to understand the basic knowledge, the fundamentals of an area and so on. That's why we assess you, because we want to make sure. And I think also assessment is not just assessing to a point X, it's also showing, okay, you had some misconceptions of knowledge and we can help you to improve this. So I think we also can use assessment to improve further learning. So if we explain the students for which reasons we are assessing their knowledge within a proctored environment for the basic knowledge, we can explain them and say, okay, it's really important that we can trust you because we want to find out what you already know, and then we can help you to overcome your knowledge gaps and to improve your knowledge. And if they can show and prove that they have the basic knowledge, we can work on the other areas and creation of things. And like Professor Godale mentioned, that students, the aim is that students create new ideas and they bring new ideas into the field, but they just can do it if they have the basic knowledge. So if we secure with online proctoring that the students have the basic knowledge, this basic knowledge is proper knowledge, then they have the possibility and potential to really create new things. And I think we should combine both. It's not black and white. It's not is online proctoring evil or not evil. It's how, when, and how. So when do we need online proctoring, and how should we design it, and when it gives us, or we need space for other methods of assessment.
Okay, very well put. Very well, indeed. Thank you. You're right. It's that part of explaining why we do assessment and even proctoring is important, because that is something that, coming back to reality, with the first contract, some people say in America it's easier to get a job than to keep the job, and I think same goes in Austria and a lot of places, that you can get a job quickly, but if you don't perform in 2 weeks and you don't do what is expected, then you may just lose the job. So indeed, it's important to explain and also make sure that they understand this is part of their career success. They have to go through these steps. And of course, they are novice, intermediate, beginner, whatever, and eventually very competent. I like to use the model of a student. And if you think about the ball falling from the staircase, you throw the metal ball from the staircase. What do you see? When it falls on the next floor, it picks up a momentum. And at the graduation, students should be like a superstar. At the first, when they enter the college or university, they're very maybe slow coming, that they even may give impression they're not very bright. But yet, when they graduate, the only way to graduate, they have to be superstars. They have to be superminds. And so that is challenge for all of us to make sure that we give a training that is kind of increasing. I don't like to use word the pressure, but I like to use word the quality of learning and learning experience, that students from year 1, 2, 3, 4, they feel that they're growing, they become so brilliant, they become so inspired, and they're ready to go on masters and PhDs or start their own business. But if the education is that they keep the same momentum and they're in the second year, third year, and they have not changed their attitude, then that education may just fail. So it is always building that momentum that, as I mentioned, metal ball falling from the staircase. At the very, very end, it picks up the momentum and it has impact. So every graduate should be somebody or someone who will impact the subject of study and the area of studies. Thank you. Very well, very well done. Dr. Stein, please.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. I was just reflecting when we speak about this. In my organization, I believe in yours as well. When a task is given to 2 people, and this person will tell you, I've got tacit knowledge, I'm using some of the knowledge that I've got, and I'm trying to tackle this task, I'm trying to answer this task. Then comes another person who will tell you, I will check all the books, I will go into the digital library, I'll go into the Google, I'll go everywhere. And who is the one who's more valued? The person who's more resourceful. How are we? Are we actually dealing with academic dishonesty among the students, or are we dealing with our inadequacies as educators and also assessors? Are we able to give the students the closest possible simulation to the real life world, or are we keeping them in the theoretical realm and always telling them, you cannot be smarter than I am? Because if your answers are beyond my scheme, which I have decided, then I will tell you, you have not learned. Now, this is our academic dishonesty, because to be honest, academically, we will let our students flourish. We will allow them to be creative. And it takes a lot from educators to do that. It's not easy. And when we come up with assessment, this whole thing about online proctoring, this whole issue, except for some cases, the whole issue about students not allowed to look into Google, students not allowed to look into resources, into books and all that. But in real life, you are expected to do that to advance in your career. You're expected to look at the resources. So what are we supposed to do then? Are we not supposed to teach, or are we not supposed to tell our students, be discerning enough? Because my question to you, which is a problematic question, I allow you 4 pages, only 4 pages to answer. So what are you going to do? You've got the whole world in front of you. Be discerning enough to find the right knowledge, the right information to fit into answering this with your ability. So I will leave everybody with that question. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. So that brings us to the end of discussion. I feel like we are just at the very beginning of discussion, and we should have more, like maybe 10 years of staying connected. Because Dr. Sam, please, just very quick, please.
Yeah, thank you so much, Professor. I just wanted to make a comment on what Dr. Gurcharan Singh said. It is so right, So at the initial thing I said that, are we testing the memory, or are we testing their ability to apply and use that information to take a decision? In real life, we are all the time using so many sources of information. The education should teach us what information to pick up where and how to apply that, than to kind of memory mug it up and be able to write it on a piece of paper or on a computer or screen. So excellent point, Dr. Gurcharan. I just wanted to compliment on that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, that's very, very kind. Well, that brings us to basically closure of this panel. This panel will be available online, I think, soon after we close this session. And hopefully, as I mentioned at the very beginning, we stay connected. We kind of continue to collaborate and perhaps together innovate and do more strategic thinking. I would like to use this opportunity to say thank you all for giving me the privilege to meet with you virtually and to share the ideas. I found all the contributions and all the comments most valuable. And I almost wish that the time comes when we hopefully can meet all of us and have a nice cup of coffee and, maybe in a more relaxed session and share ideas and meet students and colleagues. So at this point, I just want to say thank you. I found it most inspiring, most motivating. And again, I got to this issue of timing. I wish I would be at the very beginning of my career. But hopefully the colleagues who are, say, a little bit in the earlier stage of their career, they will be the masterminds and they will create that new tools and new strategies on how to create the third millennium successful students. And of course, our goal as educators, we are farmers. We are farming ideas in the hearts of and souls of students to become better and more wonderful and more successful human beings. So all of you, thank you very much. Be safe. Please do take care. And Dr. Gokal, as soon as you come with some ideas on vaccine or medication, please let us know. So we put a lot of trust in you and your colleague experts in this quest of finding a remedy for COVID. So thank you. God bless you. And it was most wonderful experience. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.